favorite episodes in Skypiea so far. The tension throughout this episode was like really, really something. Like the whole time, I just felt like something was up, something was wrong. And you could tell from the beginning with Connis that she didn't want to do what she was doing. You know, the fact that she led the Straw Hats towards Upper Yard, towards their sacrifice, essentially, towards God's divine punishment. You could tell she didn't want to do it. She was almost being forced. And that came to fruition in this episode. We saw throughout the whole thing when Connis was leading Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji to their destination where they were trying to go to Upper Yard in order to save the other lot. She wasn't happy, do you know what I mean? She was sweating, she was nervous. And the only one that actually picked up on it in the Straw Hats was Luffy. And that's one thing about Luffy. He's very conscious about this sort of thing. He's a very smart guy. He can really read people, you know. He comes off as goofy sometimes and a little bit absent-minded, but Luffy is really switched on to that sort of thing. He understands people, I think, more than most people understand people, if that makes sense. Like, he's very switched on in that sort of way. But regardless, there's a general feeling of uneasiness throughout this whole episode. As they're walking through the streets, everybody's sort of avoiding them, and you just naturally assume it's because they're criminals, and everybody sort of knows it at this point, and that is true. But the actual reason behind all of that, and the reason people are being so funny about it, is it seems like all the citizens are under this threat that if they do not enact this this divine punishment or lead the people that need it to God himself or the Upper Yard, they'll be punished and they will be killed. And we saw like a little bit of that in this episode where eventually Connis did sort of break down in tears and told Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp that that is what she was doing. She had to take them to this place, otherwise she would be killed along with her dad and all of that sort of stuff. The citizens are under complete control, it seems like, a little bit from this guy Aneru, and if they don't do what he says and they don't enact this divine punishment for him, then they get killed. And that's the pressure that she's been under. And like I said, you can sort of tell from the beginning, but seeing it actually happen in this episode was crazy. And then seeing Aneru sort of have this omnipresent feel, like when she did tell Luffy and the Straw Hat said, "Why would you tell us that? Because now she's in extreme danger." That beam of light that we saw previously in Upper Yard struck, and the power behind that is insane. Like, if it hit Luffy and Connis, they would have been dead for sure. I just need to go back for a moment. When she did tell the Straw Hats about the truth behind everything, I love the fact that their reaction was, "Why would you tell us this?" You know, it wasn't a shock or anything like that. It was just a case of, now you're in danger. Like, why would you do that? They were just worried strictly about her. And I think that says a lot about those three in general. And you could tell that Paglia felt awful about this as well. There's a scene when he's talking to Connis about this whole thing, and he's saying, "I'm so sorry you have to do this," because she's the one that's having to lead them to Upper Yard, but it's for the safety of themselves. You know, if they don't do this, it means they're dead. So they've got to put themselves in front of other people. I think anybody in that situation would do the same thing. Do you know what I mean? But regardless, after Aneru tries to strike down Connis and Luffy, they are saved by the Sky Knight. The Sky Knight returns, and something very interesting happens when he picks up Connis and they're flying away. Connis says, "When will you come back?" And apparently his true identity, according to her, is God. She refers to him as God, which is very interesting. I wonder if, my just theory, is that Aneru usurped the Sky Knight, or who we know as the Sky Knight. You know, maybe he used to be the god and the citizens used to worship him, and then he got taken over by Aneru, and Aneru is now the one that is enacting his divine punishment on these people and controlling the citizens through his power. I don't know, but there was some sort of conflict there. I'm sure that happened between Aneru and the Sky Knight, and I'm very interested to learn how that all sort of happened. But yeah, there was a whole lot that went on in this episode. I really, really liked the tone of it and everything that sort of set into motion. And of course, Luffy just wants to go ahead and beat the shit out of Aneru now. That's the whole plan. He's going to go and save his friends, and he's also going to try and beat up this god as he goes. You know, he doesn't need any other reason than that, and they're heading straight towards Upper Yard. They should have just told him in the first place that this was the case, because Luffy would have gone straight away. I know they couldn't because of the divine punishment, but I'm excited to see the encounter with Aneru if that finally happens, and with the 4 priests of Upper Yard. But like I said, this episode has set up a lot of really exciting stuff. It's good to see the penny finally drop, like what exactly is going on. We got a bit more context for everything now of why people are acting the way they are. And yeah, One Piece continues to be awesome. I'm very excited to see what happens next. So let's do it.